So the other day I was talking with some friends and I was asked, what is the worst story of narcissism that you have ever heard? And I told them, well, that's easy. It's the story that I'm about to tell you guys now. You see, some years back, I knew a guy, and just for the sake of this story, we're going to call him Matt. And Matt was perhaps one of the nicest people that I ever knew. I mean, he was in the top five nicest, most easy to be around, laid back human beings that you ever would meet. Matt's wife passed away, and then it was just him and his son. And we're going to, for the sake of this story, we're going to call Matt's son Ron. And I was very fond of Ron, just like I was very fond of his father. Ron grew up, he turned into a decent young man, and he had a wife named Samantha and a couple of kids. Now, from the outside, everyone seemed to get along in Matt and Ron's family. Matt spent a lot of time with his son Ron, and from the outside, the two seemed very, very close. Matt was always going over to Ron's house, helping him work on cars and various home improvement projects, as both of them were quite handy. Ron trusted his father with his life. There was no one he trusted more. So he would confide in his father from time to time things that were going on. One day, while they were building a back deck on the house, Ron confided to his father that his marriage was not ideal. He said that his wife had become cold and distant and refused to talk about their lack of communication and their total lack of intimacy. He said that when Samantha did talk to him, it was usually in a disrespectful tone, and that she liked making snide remarks at his expense, then pretending like she was just joking around, even though it was very hurtful. Matt told his son that marriages can be very difficult and that he just needed to hang in there. After all, they had kids, and perhaps they should just go to counseling and talk it out. Ron nodded and told his father, yeah, you're probably right. That's what I'm going to do. And so Ron took his father's advice. So Ron and his wife, they started going to counseling, and things seemed to get better. I mean, she opened up a little bit more, and from Ron's perspective, things were getting better. Then one evening, Ron came home from work a little early, walked into his home, and back in the kitchen, he heard his wife on the telephone with someone laughing and giggling. The conversation sounded strangely intimate, and dread as well as anger rose up in Ron's chest. When she came out of the kitchen and saw Ron sitting in the living room, she looked a bit startled. When did you get home? She asked him. And then Ron said, I've been home. I've been home for quite some time. You mind telling me who that was on the phone? Ron's wife crossed her arms over her chest and she got angry. Her face got all red and she says, why are you questioning me? You don't trust me? Ron replied, look, I'm just curious because it sounded real cute, whoever you was talking to. She rolled her eyes and she said, well, if you must know, it was just an old friend. Then she turned and walked away. Ron didn't like this because everything about it was wrong and everything about it seemed sketchy. It didn't seem like she was talking to an old friend. Ron went to his father and told him about what happened. And he was expecting for his father to say, look, you're probably overreacting. It probably wasn't what you thought it was. But no, Matt said the whole thing did sound suspicious and that he probably had the right to be a little nervous about what was going on, that whole scene he walked in on didn't seem right. Matt asked Ron, did he have any idea who that might have been on the phone? Ron said he didn't have any clue. So they sat there and they threw back a couple of beers. And finally, Matt turned to his son and said, look, maybe it was just a friend on the phone. You don't know that it wasn't. I would bring it up in counseling next time you two go. And keep your eyes and your ears open. To Ron, everything that his father said sounded like sage advice, and he thanked him and said he would do just that. But over the course of the next few weeks, there were more scenes like the telephone call in the kitchen, except worse. His wife started keeping weird hours and started dressing differently. And so now Ron is sure that there's another man. But Samantha would just tell him that he was paranoid and that he should calm down and that she didn't know what he was talking about. And when he would press her just a little, she would become completely enraged. And she would tell him that even his father thought he was being paranoid and weird. And Ron looked at her incredulously and he was like, "You've been talking to my dad?" And she says, "Well, you've been talking to him. He told me that you came to him and that you was worried about us and that you were confiding in him about how horrible of a wife that I've become. So he became worried and he questioned me. And I explained to him that you've been stressed and now he understands that it was not me that was the problem all the time. It's you." And we both agreed. Well, Ron wasn't trying to hear it. He told her, "Look, you've been acting weird. You've been having private conversations. You've been coming and going at weird hours. And that's why I'm concerned. And that's why I went to my dad." Samantha just shook her head and said, "What did I ever do to make you this distrustful of me?" And then she refused to talk about it anymore. Ron was pretty angry that his father had gone behind his back and talked to his wife. So he went to confront him. But Matt denied even speaking to Samantha. He said, "I don't know what she's talking about. I've never even had any conversations with her since you've been telling me that you guys have been having troubles." Now Matt was really confused. Was Samantha that much of a liar? He knew his dad wasn't lying. His dad had no reason to lie. So she's just making up stories. You add that on top of all the other weird behavior, and this woman who he was living with, who was raising his kids, was not the woman he had married. But as the weeks wore on, her behavior never changed. She was still going out at weird hours, still having secret conversations. And now she was telling him that even all of his friends thinks that he's crazy and that she's in the right and that she should probably leave him. But she loves him so much, she wasn't going to leave him behind in this distressed mental state. And heck, by now, Ron's mental state was stressed. He began not to trust his own thoughts or his own feelings. And then one day he was cleaning out Samantha's car and he found a Diet Coke bottle. And neither him nor Samantha drank Diet Coke. Neither did his kids. When he asked Sam about it, she just blew up, got really hot, and she got angry and took both the kids and went to her mother's. Ron called her up. They began to argue on the phone. And she just kept saying to him over and over again, "I'm sorry you feel that way. I'm sorry you feel that way. I'm sorry you feel that way." Whenever he was telling her what kind of emotional stress that she was putting on him. Samantha began telling all Ron's friends and even a few of his co-workers that he was being very verbally abusive to her. She went on Facebook and told everyone she was scared of her husband. And Ron's friends became distant. And even his father, Matt, became distant. Ron just wanted his family back. So he began just apologizing for everything to Samantha. He just wanted all this to go away. And so she moved back in, and the kids were back, and Ron just told himself, I can deal with this. I can make this work. But soon he found himself apologizing for every little thing. He felt like he needed to apologize when he went to the bathroom without permission, or even if he breathed too loudly. A few weeks after Samantha had returned with the kids, Ron came home and found Matt helping Samantha and the kids pack. Matt told Ron Samantha told him what he'd been doing to her in front of his grandkids and that it was intolerable. Matt said, "This whole time I thought she was the problem, but now I know that you, my own son, have been abusive." Matt told Ron the kids and Samantha would be coming to stay with him and that Ron should go and get some help. Ron sat in the empty house all alone with a deep depression nestling down on his shoulders. And after about half a year, Samantha filed for divorce, and Ron was devastated. She told the court that she had to have sole custody of the kids, as she felt Ron was a danger to them. But this didn't surprise Ron at all. Samantha had been lying and acting terribly for over a year. What did surprise Ron was that Matt took the stand and corroborated everything Samantha said. His own father lied. Matt said that Ron had confessed to him that he had put his hands on the kids and on his wife, and that's why he had to get his grandchildren away from his son. Ron was devastated. Ron lost everything. He lost his job, he lost his house, he lost all his friends, he lost his children. And none of this made any sense until the day after his divorce was finalized. His father, Matt, married Samantha. Now, I want to stress this is a true story. Like, I know these people in this story. This really happened. And even as I record this video, Matt and Samantha are married and raising Ron's kids. Ron is allowed a little contact with his children now. And to this day, Ron still claims his innocence. He said he was never abusive to anyone in the family. And Matt, the man who married his son's wife, he did finally admit to Ron that him and Samantha had been having sex for a long, long time, at least a couple of years. Matt told Ron that he couldn't help it. And why shouldn't he be happy? That he made Samantha a much better partner than he did. And that if he looked at it in a certain light, he was doing his son a favor. Because now he could be free to go find a woman who he really got along with a lot better. And this is not a lie because I actually asked Matt if he said this and he told me yeah. And then tried to explain to me what he meant by it. Told his son that he was young and that he still had time to start over and get a new family. So, dear listeners, this is one of the worst narcissistic stories that I've ever heard. Now, I know from reading in the comments section that many of you have far worse narcissistic abuse stories. But me personally, this is the worst one I ever saw with my own two eyes take place. Now, I left out even more horrible details just to protect some innocent people that were also involved in this story. But this did happen. The world is a cold, cold place. Watch your back out there, people. Apparently these days, you can't even trust your own dad. Thank you for listening and have a wise day.